not go away.
Cassie Ventura, once a rising pop star and model, took the stand as the government's key witness in the highly publicized federal trial against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Her testimony has become the center of a bombshell case involving allegations of sex trafficking, physical abuse, drug coercion, and emotional manipulation. As Cassie sat before the jury, she appeared composed yet soft-spoken, rarely glancing at Combs. The courtroom was silent, hanging on her every word. What she began to describe was nothing short of shocking, a lifestyle concealed beneath the surface of celebrity glamour, revealing a world of psychological control and sexual exploitation. The freakoffs, a hidden nightmare. Central to the case were the so-called freakoffs, long orchestrated sex parties arranged by Combs, sometimes stretching over several days. According to Ventura, these encounters involved her and male escorts, often found through Craigslist, and were heavily choreographed by Combs himself. He controlled every aspect, from the lighting, the choice of drugs, Viagra, MDMA, GHB, to the exact sexual acts performed. Cassie recounted how Combs forced her to take drugs she didn't want, knowing they made her ill. "Almost every time before the high hit, I would vomit," she said. Despite this, Combs pressured her to continue. Escorts were also given Viagra, and if their performance failed to meet Combs's expectations, or if they ejaculated too early, their pay was cut. Every detail, even where the men ejaculated, was under Combs's direction. Violence and surveillance. The most disturbing episode occurred in a Los Angeles hotel in March 2016. Security footage played in court showed Cassie fleeing a hotel suite, only to be violently chased, thrown to the ground, and dragged back into the room by Combs. Her voice cracked as she described the scene. "He grabbed me by the back of my neck and my hoodie and threw me down." She was fleeing a freakoff gone violent. At the time, an escort named Jules was still in the suite. Cassie had tried to escape while Combs was distracted, perhaps in the shower, grabbing her sneakers and belongings and running barefoot toward the elevators. But she didn't get far. Grooming, control, and manipulation. Cassie detailed how Combs had groomed her over time. She was instructed to recruit escorts, telling them Combs enjoyed voyeurism. She used the alias Jackie Star, while Combs used names like Frank Black or Frank White. To conceal their identities, they often wore masquerade masks and wigs. The use of baby oil was another odd but consistent requirement. Cassie testified that Combs demanded all participants be glistening, often reapplying baby oil every 5 minutes. This now infamous detail made headlines when federal agents discovered over 1,000 bottles of Johnson & Johnson baby oil in Combs's home during a 2024 raid. There were even more bizarre moments, like an instance where Cassie said she was told to collect semen from an escort and rub it on Combs's chest and nipples. "Did you want to do that?" the prosecutor asked. "No," she replied quietly. Fear, drugs, and psychological trauma. The prosecution presented photos Cassie had saved, including images of bruises allegedly inflicted by Combs. In one taken in Toronto, she had to cover her black eye with her hair. She described blacking out after taking GHB during a freakoff in New York, later waking up naked in a bathtub, while Combs and another man stood over her, panicked. On another occasion, during a flight, she switched seats to escape Combs's presence. He followed her, then played explicit videos from the freakoffs as a threat, implying he would leak them if she ever tried to leave him. Legal implications. domestic abuse or sex trafficking. The federal case hinges on whether Combs's actions amount not just to domestic abuse, but to sex trafficking and potentially racketeering. Prosecutors argue that Combs paid escorts across state lines and coerced Cassie into facilitating these encounters, thus crossing into federal crimes. Defense attorneys have argued some of these interactions may have been consensual and that Cassie stayed in the relationship willingly. But prosecutors counter this by emphasizing the power imbalance. Combs was a multi-millionaire mogul, while Cassie was a young woman under his emotional and financial control. A damning testimony. Cassie's testimony paints a picture of a woman manipulated into an exploitative lifestyle under the guise of love. "I just wanted it to be over," she repeated several times in court, a phrase that has now become symbolic of her suffering and the abuse she claims to have endured. She concluded emotionally, describing how Combs demanded she call him Pop Pop, the same name she had for her grandfather. A final example, she said, of his disturbing need for control and psychological domination.
Were perpetrating.
Victims.
They were were victimized.
Yeah,
meaning
victim.
this was happening to them and they were inebriated.
Right. Not knowing, I guess, how much proof it was in it, what they was doing.
And of those 8, how many seemed to be potentially minors?
2 to 3, possibly 3.
I don't know exactly what it is. You actually believe that it's not necessarily off the table yet? He might take a deal?
It's never off the table. And I handle a lot of cases, and that first deal, very rarely do you take. I think that's the start of the process. I know that it's going to have to be something where Diddy's not going to spend a substantial time in jail talking about 10 years or anything like that. Why would you take that? You would rather go to trial and see what the end result is. But if they can offer him something where it's in that 5-year range and there's an understanding that he'll be cleared of everything else, it's going to be appealing to him.
On for 35 years. I think we probably entered the music business at the same time. He entered with Uptown, I entered into Big Beat, Atlantic. At the time, I guess he was ambitious. He was then from ambitious went to doing anything, and then from doing anything to didn't care about nobody, who he could beat, and then he ended up turning into loser.
There will be up to 12 residents of 8 New York counties, including some from upstate, to decide whether Sean Diddy Combs walks away from this case a free man or stays locked down for decades.
Is there anything that you may want to confess tonight before you go in?
I keep everything right here. There you go. Or right here.
There you go.
When a top attorney quits your case in the language used, under no circumstance can I continue. I think people are just pointing at that and say, uh-oh, he can't defend him, and making their own assumptions from there. There have been kind of reports circulating. It seemed like there was a breakdown between Diddy's attorneys about going to trial in May.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent, and what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether.
To be continued. As the trial continues, more witnesses, including former employees, assistants, and possibly other victims, are expected to testify. The defense will soon present its case. But with the weight of Cassie Ventura's testimony and video evidence that supports her claims, the court, the public, and the jury are left to decide the fate of one of music's most powerful figures. Would you like me to write a fictional dramatized version, a TV script adaptation, or help you turn this into a documentary narration? Certainly, here is the continuation in English, picking up where the narrative left off. Chapter The Unraveling. In the days following Cassie Ventura's testimony, the courtroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The prosecution introduced corroborating evidence, financial records showing payments to escorts, surveillance footage, text messages, and hotel bookings under pseudonyms. All of it aligned with Cassie's chilling account. The jury was shown a series of images from Cassie's phone, private messages between her and Combs. In one, he wrote, "You do this because you love me. If you leave, I'll make sure no one ever works with you again." Another message was more threatening. "Don't forget what I have on you. Try me." More witnesses emerge. Following Cassie's appearance, 2 former employees of Combs took the stand. One, a former personal assistant, testified under anonymity. He described a household where staff were warned never to look Combs in the eyes during certain off-limit times, and were asked to clean up after parties that left rooms destroyed, smelling of sex, drugs, and baby oil. "We were told to stay quiet, to erase footage, to say nothing. He ran everything like a kingdom, and he was the tyrant king." A second witness, a former security team member, confirmed the existence of safes in Combs's residences containing drugs, phones, cash, and videotapes. He said some tapes appeared to feature Cassie and others, often unconscious or heavily intoxicated. Public reaction and industry fallout. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy exploded. News outlets dubbed it hip-hop's Harvey Weinstein case. Music labels began distancing themselves from Combs, who had once been seen as an untouchable icon. Several artists, including those who had once collaborated with him, began deleting posts and interviews in which they praised him. Women's rights organizations rallied in front of the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Believe survivors, justice for Cassie, power is not consent." In response, Combs's legal team attempted to cast doubt on Cassie's credibility, suggesting she was seeking revenge for the end of their relationship and using the trial as a platform for fame. But that argument was quickly overshadowed by the mounting evidence and the consistency of witness testimonies. A turning point. Perhaps the most dramatic moment came when the prosecution revealed a sealed audio recording. In it, Combs could allegedly be heard berating Cassie during a freakoff. "You're mine. I made you. You don't get to leave me. You want to stop now? After everything I did for you?" The defense objected, calling it prejudicial, but the judge allowed the jury to hear it. The courtroom was stunned into silence. Cassie's final statement. In a rare move, Cassie returned to the stand for a closing statement, not legally required, but allowed at the prosecution's request. She stood before the court, hands trembling slightly, and said, "I loved him. I thought he loved me too. But love doesn't look like control. It doesn't look like bruises or blackouts. I stayed because I didn't know I could leave. I hope that maybe now someone else will." Awaiting the verdict, as the trial draws to a close, Sean Diddy Combs now faces multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking, drug distribution, assault, and conspiracy. If convicted, he could face life in prison. But beyond the legal outcome, this case has already left a lasting mark, not just on the music industry, but on how power, silence, and abuse are finally being confronted in public.